Hey class, it's Mr. Dow. In week 5 of our online class this summer. I'm here with Crypto. He's our class dog, in case you didn't know that. Okay, so this video today is the one where I'm supposed to talk about why I had you read the story, The Red Convertible, which is a story that I signed back in, I think, week 3, but hasn't really come up at all until now. I signed the Red Convertible because that's where all the sample papers and sample paragraphs and exercises that deal with a research paper all use the Red Convertible as the sample story. So I just thought it'd be good to talk about it just a little bit before you start moving forward in the next couple of weeks and writing your own research paper, since you're going to be looking at examples of the Red Convertible to follow. I just want to go through the terms we've done so far in this class and refer them to Red Convertible. I'll tell you what I was thinking, and then when you get to see the sample material, maybe it'll make more sense to you that way. So Red Convertible, first thing to do in a story when you're going to analyze it is just summarize it, make sure you've got the basic story. So the story takes place in the 70s about two Native American brothers, Lyman and Henry Lamartine, and we see them, the kind of life they live. They take that very free and casual road trip that one summer. And then Henry, the older brother, has to go to Vietnam. And we learn very quickly that he has something terrible happens to him in Vietnam. I think he's a prisoner of war. When he comes back, he's not the same guy at all. And most of the story really is about Lyman trying to get his brother back to who he was before, and which he ultimately fails at doing. So first thing, who's the protagonist? I'm going to say it's Lyman. My reasons for saying Lyman are that he does narrate the story. It's in first person. That doesn't always mean that it's the protagonist, but mostly it does. Usually if it's in first person, the person telling you the story is the protagonist. If Lyman is the protagonist, then he's the one who has a conflict. What is his main conflict? I think it is the fact that his brother's changed and he would like to get his brother the way he used to be. And that's a problem for Lyman because he does feel things kind of deeply, seems like more deeply, or he's more emotive than the other Native Americans that we see in the story. Henry obviously has a conflict too, but I think Henry is Lyman's problem in this story because that's where it goes from the beginning to the end. And at the end, the resolution of the story is that Lyman kind of accepts, I can't solve this problem, it's beyond me. And then Henry commits suicide. So that's our protagonist, our conflict. Our antagonist would be obviously Henry's transformation, the change in Henry, so like a mental issue that Henry has. I always ask you about character traits. Lyman's character trait, like I said, I think he is kind of a somewhat sensitive guy. He cares deeply about his family. That's established in the very first paragraph when he's talking about how he owns a diner when he's 16, and then the diner gets torn away in a tornado, but he doesn't care because he took all of his family to dinner as his kind of extended family. And I think that's just there to show me right away that material things are not that important to Lyman in the end. It's his family connection that means something to him, particularly his brother. So that's his main character trait, I think. So after that, let's look at some of is there a dynamic character change? Does somebody change? Obviously, Henry changes, but the story's not really about him. It's about Lyman. Does Lyman change? That's harder to see because if Lyman does change, it has to be some sort of internal, really acceptance more than anything else. And, there is something in the story that kind of indicates maybe there is a change. If you go back and look, I'm always telling you, if it's on the page, it's there for a reason. There are a couple of sections that deal with a photograph that Lyman takes, the last photograph of him and Henry together, that his sister takes. And he talks about how there's a time when he looked at the photograph and he's describing Henry's smile, and then later he realizes, I can't look at that photograph anymore. And he sees his brother very differently when he looks at that photograph. And I think there's some kind of change there, some kind of understanding Lyman comes up with there that's signified by his changing view of that photograph. And that maybe really, I think what he's learning kind of is that, family love isn't enough sometimes. Sometimes some traumas are so deep that there's nothing, that love won't really help them. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is accept what happens and move on. So in terms of the other literary terms that we've talked about in class, this is a first-person story, as I said. That's kind of important. I do learn a lot about Lyman because he's the one narrating it, and I do get some of his internal issues. In minor characters, here's a story without many minor characters. It really is just Lyman and Henry. I mean, they have a little bit with their mother, a little bit with that girl that they take to Alaska, but neither character is that important, really, to telling the story. So I don't think I'm going to get much out of minor characters. Irony, I think there's a little irony in here, but not that much. Against the story's not really focused too much on irony. There is symbolism, however. Here's a story where the symbol runs from the very beginning to the very end. And I think anyone reading the story should be thinking, if you're taking this class, the red convertible has to be a symbol, right? What's it a symbol for? It is a symbol. The author draws your attention to it, so we know that he wants us to look at that car as meaning more than just the car itself. Before you try to interpret it, when you have a symbol, what you always do is you look at the specific details of that symbol and you say, well, what are they? Why is it a red convertible? Why is it a convertible? What do those things indicate that sort of like that we can link to the story? Take red, it's not green or blue. Well, red, they're Native Americans. Red, the color of blood. Red, passion, anger. A lot of things there where red becomes a color that connects to the conflict of the story. Why a convertible? I think the convertible thing ties the beginning. It's a two-seat convertible 60s car that's like probably the most free feeling car, the kind of car where you can express or enjoy freedom more than any other car, really. So I've got a car that links me to the idea of blood and anger and passion and freedom all together. And the car doesn't stay the same in this story. In the beginning, it's completely pristine and beautiful, and then they drive it all over the place. Later, when Henry goes to Vietnam, the car is stopped. It doesn't go anywhere. Then the car gets beat up when Lyman kind of destroys it in order to get his brother to pay attention to him again. So we see the car goes through a lot of changes. In the end, I think I have enough information there. I can say the red convertible for me is a symbol of the brothers' relationship or their bond. And I can trace that connection all through the story. Everything that happens to the car reflects something that's going on between their relationship with each other. So that symbol is hugely important. And at the end, what happens? At the end, the bond is broken, and Lyman deliberately drives the car into the river and watches the car sink. It's over. He's given up on his brother. So symbolism is important there. Narrative style is not that important, I think. Most of the story is told from A to B to C, chronological order. There's some time jumps, but not so many that the story is peculiar in any way. Pretty straightforward language. So I wouldn't get much out of narrative style. So in the end, what's going to happen is when you do your research paper, you have to decide, well, what do I want to write about here? You know, in your paper, you've already dealt with it twice. You're not committed in the research paper to using the exact same topics. You've written about character trait, you've written about conflict and dynamic character. You can continue to write those paragraphs if you like, or you can say, you know what, I don't think conflict's a great thing to write about. I would rather write about minor character or symbolism or irony. That's up to you. The thing to do, though, is to think, what are the elements that come up the most, that mean the most to me? For me, going through the whole list of the character traits we've dealt with in Red Convertible, I think Lyman's character trait, internal, external conflict, those two things together it works here. Lyman has an internal conflict with his own feelings about what's happened to his brother, and his brother is an external problem for him. You know, Henry is a changed person. So I've got both levels of conflict there. Symbolism for sure. I don't need, first person point of view often covers what happened in internal conflict, so I would only take one of those, not both. I don't only have minor characters. Oh, we didn't talk about setting. I think I might be able to get something out of setting if I write about that, because this story is very specifically about Pacific Northwest Native Americans, and particularly I have two settings that stick out. One is when they take that drive up to Alaska in the beginning of the story, and I really like it's the definition of freedom, that drive. It is completely schedule free. It is agenda free. There's no goal. It's just pure freedom on that drive. And I also have the setting in the 70s and Vietnam, which was, there's a lot I can do with that too if I'm writing about this story. Just the idea that Henry is going off to fight a war that is not, it's not his war. It's not his tribe's war. It's ultimately, you have to say it's a white man's war, and he's really kind of sacrificing himself to a society he doesn't really belong to. So, okay, and that's enough. Basically, I just want to do this. I wanted to think out that story a little bit, talk about it a little bit, and then you'll see as we move forward, I kind of go through the same steps you're going through to make my research paper, and I use a Red Convertible, so you'll see it in process. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to say about Red Convertible. At this stage, let's see if the dog is still around. No, he got bored. He left. Okay. All right, keep going. See you later.